You have to know how many hours in a day you have, and you have to actually walk it out and look at it. And then if you don't do it, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with doing it and then regretting it and hating yourself. That's a very bad feedback loop. The perception of us is so different from how we perceive ourselves and who we are. There's three kind of things going on at once. Mindfulness and meditation kind of fits you there where you can see all three selves. And with that comes the lack of judgment, which I do think is the source of all suffering and stress, is saying,
hello and welcome to MindShift, the podcast where we explore how to achieve a balanced, fulfilling life by changing the way we think. I'm Alina Bartuli, the creator of this podcast. Having lived in 5 countries and learned 5 languages, I've connected with people from diverse backgrounds. I found that fundamental human struggles and dreams are remarkably similar despite our differences. Let's explore these similarities and differences together as we navigate a path to a fulfilling, peaceful life in our ever-changing world. So welcome back to another episode of MindShift with Alina Bartuli. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies the word multifaceted. Mike Oppenheim is an accomplished novelist, podcaster, musician, and philosopher. So many talents, incredibly diverse background. From writing thought-provoking novels like Dysfunction and The Apology to co-hosting the fascinating podcast Coffin Talk, which explores deep questions about death and philosophy, Mike is no stranger to complex ideas. But he's also someone who has lived abroad, spending time in Thailand, and he brings a unique perspective on adapting to new environments, both personally and creatively. So in this episode, we'll dive into how Mike's unique upbringing, experience, time living abroad, and creative work shaped his worldview and his philosophy on life, as well as practical insights on how to adapt to a new country and culture. So I'm excited to welcome Mike Oppenheim to the show.
hi, and thank you. That was awesome. It's always weird to hear about yourself and sit there and kind of smile, but that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's weird, but yeah, but I meant what you said, what I said.
Thank you.
So when you reached out, you mentioned that you were a huge mind shifter and you were raised by Transcendental. How do I pronounce it right? Transcendental meditators. In the San Francisco Bay Area, which made you feel like an outsider looking in as a kid from one side, but from the other, this type of upbringing gave you a unique perspective on mindfulness since you were a child. First and foremost, what is Transcendental meditation? How is it different from other type of meditations? How has this foundation influenced the way you approach daily life as an adult, especially in today's, fast-paced world?
So to start off, Transcendental meditation, the most popular reference for people older than both of us would be the Beatles practiced it. They went to India and met a man named Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he taught them Transcendental meditation. Jerry Seinfeld is a very famous comedian. He practices it and really likes to advertise it. It's a brand, it's a type of meditation, and it's a effortless meditation. So I don't really tell people that they should necessarily do transcendental meditation, but what I am trying to make clear to people when I discuss meditation is that there are many forms of it. Some people consider walking meditation, and I don't cast any judgment or definitions to it. I do know that the reason I stuck with this form is that it's effortless, which means you can't do it incorrectly. There's no such thing as a wrong meditation. You don't judge the perceived efficacy of it, nor do you judge when it's frustrating. They do give you pointers. They tell you if you're very frustrated, that's usually good. It means stress is coming out, but it doesn't mean it's good. It's just usually that's a sign, don't worry about it, things like that. So Transcendental meditation is a mantra-based meditation where you close your eyes for about 20 minutes twice a day, and you repeat the mantra when you remember it. And then when you forget it, you're transcending usually. So and to transcend just means to go between states. So Western science has either proven, or you could not, like their studies, I don't really care, but they say that, there's not just waking, sleeping, and REM. There's other stages of consciousness, and transcendental meditation supposedly takes you into the lowest form, not low in a hierarchy sense, but literally below. And that's where pure thought exists and consciousness exists. It's the source of what we call creation, if that makes any sense.
It's where our subconsciousness or consciousness exists. Does it also have some healing properties, like therapeutic properties?
Yeah, according to them, and I would definitely, this kind of goes into your other questions. like for me, I've never taken medication. I don't take antidepressants or anti-anxiety. I take meditation. Like it definitely does something. And the thing is, you just do it 20 minutes twice a day. I usually do 40 minutes in the morning and then 20 in the afternoon because I like to do more. But that's, because I'm in my 40s and it's been a long life and I have extra time now. But for the busy go-getters, it was designed to be something you just set your alarm 30 minutes early, meditate for about 20, get up, do your day, and then at some point you should get a break that's roughly 20 to 30 minutes. And they suggest you do it on an empty stomach. And it's like a medication. It's like a medicine for you. And what they claim is that when you're in this state of transcendence where you're not conscious, so to speak, but yet you're aware, that's like an area where it's impossible to have negativity. And it's true. It's a very like uplifting, bubbly feeling. And you can have that feeling in consciousness, but it's weird to be like consciously unconscious and experiencing it. And they say that like that's how you relieve all stress. And so much like Western science and most sciences corroborate, cancer is most likely caused by stress on the cells. We don't understand it fully, but like the cure to cancer would literally just be the cure to stress. And so they claim that enough meditation can do that, not cure cancer. I'm not going off on some weird tangent, but literally just reduce stress. So the common wisdom is 20 minutes keeps the stress from building up, and the other 20 minutes starts to reduce the already built up stress.
When you practice it regularly, does it help you to collect less stress on a daily basis, to be more balanced in a daily life?
Yes, I would say unequivocally. The best evidence I can give to people is that I was taught to meditate when I was 9, and I did it consistently until I was 13. And then because I grew up in a typical American high school system, it was very unpopular to be a meditator, and it was like not cool. So I decided to stop meditating literally for the most juvenile, relatably pathetic reason, as I wanted to fit in with my peer group. So I stopped, and I always felt guilty as an American specifically, as I learned more about our history and our current, like this is back in the 90s, our what we now call neoliberalism, just the practice of like setting up military compounds in countries to keep peace. And I was never comfortable with that. I'm still not. So the reason this is relevant is that when 9/11 happened, the tax on the trade centers, instead of thinking like, how could this happen? Why did this happen? I thought, oh, like they finally got back at us a little. And it wasn't a good feeling. Just, I don't want to say, violence is violence. I'm purely against it. However, like many Americans, I don't know how many, because it was not popular to say so at the time, I definitely understood it. And I was not like, we were bamboozled, we were attacked for no reason. Now, I don't think innocent people working in a building deserve to be killed, obviously, but our rules of war aren't any more fair, And so the point is, I was freaking out and I was like really depressed. And my mom called me and she said, well, have you tried meditating? And I was like, what? And she's like, just go sit and meditate and see if you're a little less stressed. Because I was like an 18-year-old, or maybe I was 20. But the point is, I was really young. And I was just like, I was catastrophizing it as like I was guilty. Like I felt like so much remorse and sadness. And I meditated and I instantly felt better, meaning like not in that like low state where I was like really depressed and, other emotions that are too strong to handle. And instead, I developed like a much more mature outlook on like, okay, well, you're an American, you live in this country, you cannot expatriate. There's no other country that's going to accept you. You have no job, no skills, you're in college. So you might as well be the best American you can be. Start speaking proactively against war, like preach nonviolence, behave like you've always done as like a good stand-up person, and keep meditating. So I've literally not missed a meditation since 9/11, 2001. I've just done it every day of my life. It's now 2024. And what also happened, this is the only other evidence I can give, I went from being a mostly B student to a straight A student. I never got lower than an A ever again. So I'm very convinced that it like helps me clear the clutter in my brain. I'm not saying it made me smarter. It has something to do with work ethic and dedication. It's not about intelligence. It didn't make me smarter. It made me care much more about my duty as a student, if that makes sense.
Also, in that age, when you're 18, probably you're dealing with a lot of hormonal changes. So a lot of people feel conflict in emotions and feelings. So it kind of makes sense that meditation practice made you more stable and less stressed out and anxious, right? And that's why you were
Yeah.
able to concentrate better on your studies. That's how I think it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that's
Yeah.
totally accurate.
Yeah. So, could you please tell us more about where you grew up in the Bay Area? What was the regional culture like back then, and how did you contrast with your family's culture and the way you were raised? Now that you're older, have you observed any cultural shifts?
The Bay Area, when I grew up in the 1980s and 90s in the Bay Area, so approximately 1984 to 1999, I was cognizant and aware of it from like 85 on, I would say. To me, it seemed normal. So it was only when I took vacations or when I watched TV that I realized we weren't normal, because A, we were the butt of a lot of jokes on television, like, oh, those crazy hippies, because we're not LA. We're not actors and actresses. We're a very like literary community, and we're very like political. That's what we're known for.
Oh,
I feel bad slamming a place I not only grew up in, but then moved back and lived in for 15 years. But I will say the following. I left it after a second stint in 2016 because it became, and I'm specifically talking about the Bay Area, not all of California, it became a very sanctimonious, judgmental culture about like ethics and values. And I felt like it was absolutely self-defeating, not self-serving. So there were like protest after protest and riot after riot, and like just constant, like you couldn't get on the public transportation. The streets I was on would have like police blocking it. And it was all due to like this frustration and anger between like all these different groups. And it was very stressful. It was just like a stressful place to live. So I left it very abruptly. I did not want to. I had bought a home there. I was planning to live there until I died. I still miss it because I miss like the weather. Also, I instantly connect with most people in the Bay Area. Like, they're my people. I'm from there. But the other thing that happened was, and this speaks to like moving and cultures, the Bay Area population of like 1985, there's like, maybe that's like 5% of the population now. Most of the people who live there were not born there, are not from there, and moved there from all over the world to get like really high paying jobs in tech specifically. And these people are not good or bad, but they're not my people. I don't like identify with them. And also their wealth made me feel very poor. So that would be how I would describe the changes in that microculture. But then on a larger level, it's also astonishing to me to have been to all 50 states. And I think we were going to maybe talk about this later, but every state has like this peculiarity. There's like this, we think we are this, but the nation thinks we're this. The world might not even know we exist or think this of us. And so I've been to like 30 something countries too. I feel like most people in most places have this dilemma. Like the place I lived in and my memories of it don't match what it's becoming. Tourism is bad. Tourism is good. We need it for the economy. Americans are very, in my opinion, self-berating people now. We take on issues that other cultures don't. Like, we like worry about our racism on a level that no other culture I've visited or know of cares about. And literally, they don't care. They're not saying racism is good, we support it. They're saying talking about racism endlessly is not a solution to racism, nor is it a good thing to do in front of children. And, that's the number one thing I would hear teaching ESL for 15 years or 10 years rather, was just like, you guys have these like complicated conversations about gender and race in front of children. And I don't understand how you can think that's going to work out well. And now 20 years later, I'm seeing it's not working out well. There's so much confusion in my culture about our culture. There's so much like half the country is like pride for America with not a whole lot of reasons. And the other half is, we're a horrible country. We must make up for our sins. But that's really imbalanced, both approaches. So that's part of why I expatriated, why I would live in a different place, was I really was kind of down on my own culture. And it took a long time for me to get like that self-love back, that like, I am one American. I did not elect, nor am I like responsible for our leadership. Both bad leaders we've had recently. Like, I don't, my job as an American is to remain optimistic with reason and to inspire my peers to behave better and to be nicer, kinder people. So, I do not subscribe to the American Kool-Aid anymore, that other countries are more noble or other cultures are better than us. There's no hierarchy, in my opinion. They all have warts and problems. And I'm sure you've heard of like the iceberg theory of culture. Like, you can only see like 10% of a culture from outside of it. And then the longer you live in it. But even if you move to Thailand, like I did, you'll never see the low 30%. You just won't. They won't include you in it and they won't tell you about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a different thing when you live as an expat in a foreign country, right? That takes years to integrate. First, you're adapting, right? You're learning language, you're adapting to a culture, but just like superficial things. But then, yeah, it takes years to just integrate into society and a lot of work. And also you have to have a kind of desire, a wish, right? To understand how different people think. You know, essentially, in my experience, essentially what I understood is that people are just struggling with similar things, you know, whether in the US or no, there is, of course, different economical problems. Sometimes some nations, they are more like, we need to survive, we need to provide food. So it's like paycheck to paycheck. But then that happens in the US too, you know. At the end of the day, finding happiness and balance in life is something that everybody, I think every culture struggles with in a different way. So you mentioned watching the world shift towards values like mindfulness, tolerance, and patience, and you were raised with those values. What practices or habits would you recommend to help people slow down, to be more mindful, and lead to a more peaceful life, like today?
I would recommend, ironically, less social media, because I would say that this technically might be filed under social media. I actually don't think a podcast is social media. I think it's incredibly different. But to announce this podcast, we will both probably use social media. And so I'm not telling people you can't use it, but I would say at the very least, reflect on your understanding of it and where it is in your hierarchy of your day, because every minute you're spending on social media chasing whatever it is you're chasing is a minute you could have been meditating, and a minute you could have been reading a book, a minute you could have been just not feeling frenzy. So I'm not anti-social media, nor am I anti like phones and all the technology. I'm more about helping people at least develop a self-awareness of how much of your life before this technology was spent like relaxed versus now how much do you feel like, oh, I haven't checked the news in 3 hours. What if there was a bomb that went off in this other country that's thousands of miles? I mean, I get it. I understand paranoia, fear of war. We're all interconnected, globalization. But you also could just be sitting with your family enjoying a great picnic when the nuclear bomb drops and you die. Like, it wouldn't actually have helped you to like live in fear for 3 months and like fear it. It wouldn't help you. So I try to like look at a lot of it that way. And then the other thing is, really ironically, is I would try, at the very least, if you are going on social media or if you are obsessed with like what other people think, I would spend more time trying to develop compassion for people whose thoughts offend you than anything else. I would not spend time commiserating or celebrating with people who think like you, because all humans are really heterogeneous, meaning not homogenous. And so each of us might say like we might both say we're anti-war. I am sure there is a nuanced step at which you and I would disagree on what that means. And so, so I think that like there's a way to understand, like in my country, I'll be very specific. We have this like theming culture war, and it's iconized right now by the blue left and Kamala Harris literally like as a name, and then this guy Trump and this red party. 8 years ago, Trump was not a member of the Red Party, but people still talked about the Red Party. And Kamala Harris wasn't like in any way gonna be like the front runner. So there's really like 4 mixed messages going on. But I try to listen to Kamala Harris. I try to listen to Democrats. I try. It's very hard to listen to Donald Trump. I'm not going to lie, but I try. I really do, because he is a human. And you are a human, and I am a human, and the leader of North Korea is a human, and Adolf Hitler, everyone's favorite enemy, was a human. So I try to look at, how did this human get to become this person who says these things? Is there a limit to what they would say and do? And what do they think they're doing? Like I don't feel like most leaders who I don't like think they're doing evil. I think that's very rare. I think that most evil people don't think they're evil. And I think that's like a huge issue in my country and my culture. So for mindfulness, this is mindfulness to me. Mindfulness is these disgusting, awful, hard thoughts. Like, it's not actually non-judgmental to say I hate Donald Trump. Like that, there is an actual judgment going on because you don't know the trauma he suffered and how it affected him. And so if I'm going to stick up for a homeless person who's addicted to drugs, who like, might be violent on the streets, I sort of have to stick up for Donald Trump too. It's not fair to say one of them had such a worse childhood than the other. And again, I don't know what any of their childhoods were like. So for mindfulness, I literally think that it's the ironic approach to it would be learning how to see things that anger you and not turn away, like face them and then be mindful. And so I want to make it clear that I'm not saying I like any of these people I mentioned. I'm not at all. What I'm saying is I have a mindful approach for the emotions they stir in me, because that's what we're discussing. We're talking about how do you deal with internal emotions and how they make you feel crazy.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, social media, I think it's bad for two reasons. Well, maybe more reasons, but I could think of two right now. One is the news, the exposure to news at the speed, at the rate that probably human brain was not meant to process. I just spoke to a psychologist recently, and she told us we are running old hardware in a new software environment in a new modern world. So like our brain is still fighting for survival, even though we're well fed, well clothed, I have a roof over my head, but my brain is still fighting for survival for some reason. It's still in a jungle, And so when we scroll this social media feed, I think too many news appear within like 1 minute. You have like 100 news. It's overstimulating for brain, and it brings so much anxiety, because I know exactly how it works, because when the war, the full-scale invasion happened in my birth country in Ukraine, I could not, my family was there, and I could not stop scrolling the news. And I subscribed to all the news channel about Ukraine, even from the front lines. I was like, I cannot miss anything. I need to stay on top of this thing. But at the end of the day, by me upsetting my mental health, which at the end I did, my mental health was horrible after that.
Yes.
And the second thing, I think it's comparing. Like sometimes the social media is about success, right? It's successful success story. That's what algorithms like. That's what people like. And so a lot of times you just scroll and you're like, okay, these people have something I don't have. And you get upset about it within millisecond. Like sometimes you don't even pick up on that like subtle emotion, but then you're upset. Yeah.
The second point you made is the hardest thing for me to, the first social media I had was MySpace, and it was like 2008, I think. Like, I don't remember. But the point is, I am lucky. I'm lucky. I went until I was about 25, 26 without ever having what you just talked about, the comparison to like fake or real success of my peers. And then whenever I met someone who was successful, it was obvious to me. They didn't announce it, and I felt happy for them. It was never, a famous person once said, like, comparison is the thief of all joy. And so I do think your first reason was more than valid. It's just a lot different to talk about. But the second reason is something that I think no matter who you are and where you are, that is like likely to happen. And then again, to go back to children, they already have that problem. Like all children have the problem of like, why did they get a bigger cookie than me? Like that's like the most natural child problem. So I think that what you said is not only actually worth like all of our cultures reflecting on, but I'm a parent of young children, and I haven't had to ban social media yet or like introduce it, but I don't even have the word for like, I'm not terrified. It's not hyperbolic, my emotion. And it's like this real sadness I have for like what they're going to have to go through because I didn't. So it's like very weird as a parent to be like, oh, you're going to have to learn how to not like cry when someone bullies you on social media, or you have to learn how to not be a bully on social media. Like both sound terrifying. And like here in America, there's a man named Jonathan Haidt, and he just published a book, and like he's really suggesting that parents don't even let kids have a phone or social media. And I'm kind of almost there. I feel like the suicide rates and the depression is just out of control, and we're two adults talking about it. So
Exactly.
Um,
Once again, adult with your brain is already formed, and you have some tools how to deal with social media challenges. And even though as adults, we sometimes get trapped into that social media trap. But for kids, I feel like their brains are not developed. Not I feel, it's a fact. Their brains is not developed yet, certain brain functions. And it's a new challenge for sure for many parents in modern life to what to do with this. Yeah.
yeah.
So you've experienced life in a rock band, written novels. Many people dream about these things, hosted a podcast. These are all high energy, demanding pursuits. How do you balance such a diverse creative career while maintaining a sense of inner calm and peace?
Well, I think the meditations help. And then the other thing is I am very selfish about taking a little time to myself every day. I love the crossword, so that's my thing, but I just like carve it out. I just like when I start to feel overwhelmed, I'm like, well, when you finish these 7 things you said you were going to do, you're going to go outside because I live in Arizona where you can go outside almost every day. And I'm going to do a crossword puzzle. My wife and I like have bracketed times where we like watch the kids together separately. Like we do all these things and we have like a great relationship where we agree that like your time off is your time off. It does not matter. Like you can sleep in, you can take a nap, you can meditate, you can go outside and do a crossword. The point is we both have this built-in structure for like alone me time. And I think that's like really important. And then this kind of segues backwards into like the other question. I would not suggest people use this time to go on social media. Like if social media actually relaxes you, first of all, congratulations. Like, I don't know how, but,
How you?
yeah, but I do think that it's really important to be, again, I use the word selfish to be funny about it, but like just self-love, just like whatever it is that you do.
Yeah, it's not selfish.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I am actually struggling with this building a balanced structure now that I'm doing podcasting and doing some creative work and I'm trying to establish my own business, right? My struggle was the structure, because when you start your project, you work on it so hard that it's difficult to let go ever and to have your time. And sometimes you just have to have really strict boundaries between your work time, especially if you work from home, right? And your family time and your you time, maybe time with your spouse. Can you share with us if you because you have done creative work for longer than I have, how do you structure your day in blocks, or?
I find the only way to get things done is to have a list and get to cross them off. It's like there's something so therapeutic for my personality type. And it's like the achievement is the achievement. So like I know they say life is a journey, not a destination, but there's many destinations on the journey. And so to take those steps, I think it's important to like record them and then do them. So I have, it's so far away that it would not behoove us for me to go get it, but I make these like color coordinated schedules and I have 5 colors and one is for like physical and mental health. So like the time I go to the gym, the times I meditate. One is for all of my creative ambitions. So it's like light blue, which is like writing, podcasting, blogging, making movies, recording songs. One is family, which is green. So it's just all the time I'm going to spend with my children and my wife. And then the one I dislike the most is the day job that I still have yet to quit, but I am slowly trading for the dream job. So it is cool. Like I'm actually seeing progress by doing this. I've seen my work week go from 40 to 30 to 25 now. And then I've seen the other work week climb up, but it's worth it and it's paying off. And I don't mean that like financially or otherwise. I just mean it literally is paying off. Like I'm feeling joy. So progress and joy go hand in hand with my personality type. And so I recommend to everyone, you have to know how many hours in a day you have, and you have to actually block it out and look at it. And then if you don't do it, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with doing it and then regretting it and hating yourself. And that's a quality I don't have. I don't have this thing that my wife, with all due respect to her, has, where she doesn't do something and then beats herself up about it. That's a very bad feedback loop and it's not like smart. So you have to either take out the block that you are repeatedly not doing.
I was surprised because I actually also have color codes in my
cool.
schedule.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And does it
The
work?
reason I created, well, when I pay attention to it, it works, right?
Yeah.
So that the reason I came up with it, I didn't read about it anywhere. It's just the thing I came out with. It was because I used to overwork. I am ambitious, but not in a healthy way. You can be ambitious, but still realistic, But I'm ambitious, and sometimes I set unrealistic goals or unrealistic deadlines, and that's what gets you really anxious, And so I realized that I'm working too much, and I lack some balance in my life, which what we're talking about in my podcast, and we're trying to figure out how to get that balance right. So I did what I did. I also color coded, but in my case, work is green. If I see that the week is full of green, that something is wrong. It's missing the joy. The joy is yellow. So all fun activities I color code them yellow, and some deadlines are red still, but it's like minimum. It's like one time event, right? But the blocks that which you mentioned, I also have the blocks. I pay attention to that to see how balanced my life is.
That is a crazy coincidence, because I definitely never read this in a book either, and I just and I love too that our colors it's just crazy. That's really cool. I'm so happy to hear that. It actually made me really happy to hear that. That's awesome.
You have a podcast called Coffin Talk, where you explore themes of death and meaning. Why do you have a podcast about dying? The thing that people are afraid to even think about, not to mention talk.
The essential point of the podcast is to get people to talk about death, but specifically in my culture, in my country, of which you understand, because Americans do not talk about death. And if anything, we actually brush it under an uncomfortable rug. And we say they've departed, we lost them, oh, they're ill, and we just don't deal with it. So I volunteered in hospice, which is an American and British and now worldwide convention where you let people die with dignity. You admit that they're dying. They have to have 6 months or less to live. In my country, there's a strict requirement. They have to be designated by a medical professional that you have less than 6 months to live. And then you're designated to a place called hospice where they can give you higher painkillers. And there's just compassionate people who are there to help you as you depart. And so what I saw over and over and over again in this experience was family members who were just utterly shocked and could not handle the fact that someone they loved was dying. But even worse than that was the people who were dying and hadn't done that. And it was just chaotic, because you don't have time when you're cringing with pain from cancer to really think about the meaning of life and what you did and didn't do wrong. But all these people kept telling me literally on their deathbeds, I wish I'd spent more time with family. I wish I hadn't worked as hard. I wish I had I wish. It was just so much regret. And so I decided, after I stopped doing it during COVID, because we had so much more time, to start a podcast where I would interview people about their philosophy on what happens when you die. So I decided to approach it from a very different angle than I had read about, which is, well, the fear of death is a fear of something. So what is this thing that people are fearing? Because if after you die, you go to heaven, I would be lining up for euthanasia. Why would I waste my time in this perceived not heaven if there's, so I kind of, first of all, I don't believe most people think that. I think most people intrinsically feel an excitement and a desire to live here in this plane of existence. And so I think that by asking them that, it lets me then talk to them about what I call the meaning of death, which is how are you taking time and the limitations of life and making meaning out of that? How are you turning that into something useful? So I've just interviewed guest 199 yesterday, and you will be guest 200 something. I can't wait. But I only have 2 questions on purpose. I ask everyone, how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of? And I do that because, especially in America, there's this real thing about age and generation and perspective. And I'm actually proving one interview at a time that there are boomers, Gen Zers, and there's millennials who talk like boomers. It's silly. This whole you are a product of your era. In my opinion, it's not really accurate. So I'm trying to dispel stereotypes and myths, and I try to have as diverse people on as I can, and then I try to advertise the person for what approach of diversity they're bringing to it. So it's not diversity in the sense that your ethnicity might be Korean, Ukraine. It's not about ethnicity per se or race. It's more about oh, you grew up as a Mormon. Oh, you grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. Oh, you grew up as a Christian. You're still a Christian. You became a Christian. You do past life reincarnation therapy. Like I've had like, I mean, someone can Google it. I've had like as many diverse interviews as I possibly can. And no one answers the question exactly the same. No one has the same philosophy. And I leave every interview just like a huge fan of another human on earth. So it's awesome for me. It's also very helpful. I've interviewed like people who will vote for Donald Trump this year, and I've seen a soft, compassionate side from them. And I've interviewed people who will undoubtedly not vote for him and think they hate everyone who votes for him, say the same thing as people who will vote for him. Like it's very interesting to see that like you said, the facade, the perception of us is so different from how we perceive ourselves and who we are. Like there's three kind of things going on at once. And to go back to your original question, mindfulness and meditation kind of fits you there where you can see all three selves. Like you can kind of like witness yourself more objectively. I wouldn't say completely objectively. And with that comes the lack of judgment, which I do think is the source of all suffering and stress, is saying this could be better. This is not the right way. Like literally at the end of the day, I mean, if you thought murder was good, then you would want to move to a country with a lot of murder. You would like in, you know what I mean? Like it's not really, there's not a lot of set. Like if you explain to someone what money is and how it creates division, most people who are young enough and haven't experienced it yet would say money sounds bad. But yet we live in a world where most people think money is good. So money is a symbol. It's not real or fake. But my point is, like, by interviewing people from all over the world for the show, I really am starting to see this like diversity of what makes people get up in the morning. And the best part of the interview, because it does circle back to what you said, is usually the person's major trauma comes up in the interview, but it's self-professed. I don't dig for it. I'm never like, gotcha. Like it's actually just necessary to explain their philosophy. Like the two are so linked, because when bad things happen to you, you think you're a good person. So it makes you think, why do bad things happen to good people? And that's everyone's experience in life, I think. And then death has a lot to do with morality in a lot of people's lives. They think you do or do not get judged when you die. I was not raised by parents who did that to me. Thank you, because it sounds terrible. I cannot imagine thinking that there's a person judging me all my life and then I'm going to have to face them and stand trial. Like I instead like to think that we're all co-creators of this crazy world and we're just each stuck behind our eyes perceiving it. But
you also have lived in Thailand, and many of our listeners have also moved from country to country, right? So what helped you to adapt to a new culture and a new very, very different lifestyle?
This book called I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj was the only reason I didn't get not clinically depressed, but as close to that word as I could get when I was in Thailand. First of all, culture shock is such a real thing. The Thai people are the most, they're literally, it's the land of smiles. So it's like the most overtly friendly appearing culture. It does not matter. It is so demoralizing to have no one understand you. My Thai was terrible when I lived there. It's much better now, but it doesn't help. And then also, this helped me deal with what I talked about earlier about being an American. They don't care about America over there, and they don't care about our politics, and they don't care. It's like really interesting that I'm sure Western countries like Europe especially cares about our election and stuff, but I don't think the average person in El Salvador, for example, truly cares about the American election coming up. So living in another country helped me see how small and unimportant I am as an American, because when you grow up in America, there's this fuel constantly being messaged to all the citizens of we're the city on the hill, we're this noble beacon of democracy, you must blah blah blah. And so living in Thailand, I got to live in a air quotes third world country. I got to see parts that are first world and parts that are indeed third world, and I got to see toilets without plumbing all over. I got to see real poverty that's visibly so different than the real poverty in my country. My country has starving poor people, but it seems like a choice. It might not be, but it seems like it. They seem to be by choice on a street, looking haggard. Whereas in Thailand, you just see very poor people all the time who are poor because of their system. And there's not they're never going to be rich. There's no gateway to that. And that was really mind blowing. I would go to a movie theater and I'd have to stand up and sing to the king. It's a monarchy. And if I said the wrong thing, I could be thrown in a jail with no right to a lawyer. Like, they don't have my prison system. So it was like very interesting. Americans talk about like free speech really arrogantly today. I lived in a country that doesn't have free speech, Thailand, and it was not a comfortable feeling, and a lot of countries don't have free speech. It's not common, actually. And so there's I feel like living there helped me just humanize myself, humanize the world. And then also, like, there's this really improper myth in the West that the East is better. And it was really nice to see that that's not really true or false. I've spent next to no time in Korea, but I've been to Japan, Thailand, and a few other Asian countries, and like, they're just countries with people. Like, so are we. And so it really helped. But the culture shock was the most scary thing I've ever experienced. I like the experience. It was just loneliness, alienation, feeling unable to like feel expressed and understood. And like, everything else was perfect. The food is better there. Like, unabashedly, I like would choose Thai food over American food any day. It's healthier. Well, I don't know what like secret chemicals are in things, but it feels healthier. They have beautiful areas. I don't love Bangkok. It's like a huge New York City, basically. It's almost the same.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your incredible journey. So for our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about Mike's work, be sure to check out his novels and don't miss his podcast, Coffee and Talk. Is there any other place you can tell we can find you?
Yeah, actually everything. The podcast, my books, my blog, which is actually my favorite thing I do. I write weekly, funny, philosophical essays. All of that is available at mikeyop.com. That's www.mikeyop.com. And I send out one email a week if you subscribe. I do not send out more. It's just one email a week. It advertises the podcast. I write a thoughtful essay, and I do my best to try to unite humanity with humor. So
thanks again for joining us today, Mike. And until next time. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and share this episode with your friends, someone who's about to embark on a journey of their own, whether it's to a new country, a new creative project, or just a new chapter in life. Thanks again for joining us today, and until next time, keep adapting, keep creating, and keep pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone.
Thank you for listening to MindShift. This episode was made possible by pure enthusiasm and the decision to follow my dreams. You can help support future episodes by contributing on the platforms such as Buy Me a Coffee or Ko-fi, where you can find me as Alina Bartuli. Don't forget to subscribe to my social media. I hope you feel more satisfied and accomplished as you pursue a life that brings you happiness, peace, and inspiration. I'm Alina Bartuli, and I'm excited to continue this incredible journey with you. Bye-bye, until next time.